I heard a couple of Dr. Coles in there. Only my mother likes to call me Dr. Cole. It's just Jeff. It's an honor to be here. I am sorry for the English. I'm actually working on my Spanish, but I don't think it would do any of us any good if I tried that today. It is one of my favorite cities in the world. It's nice to be in a country that just re-elected its president with 53%. I don't think I'm going to be able to say that in America next year, but we shall see. But anyway, I'm not going to use PowerPoint. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. And I'm going to share with you some of what I think you're interested in. But I'm welcome to try to read your response. If you want to ask questions at any time, I welcome that as well. And we can move in whatever directions you would like. I've been told that we should wrap this up by 7:30, so let's get to work. That's just a joke, I promise. Let's get to work immediately, but before I can tell you some of the trends we're seeing around the world, let me take about 3 minutes to share with you the work I do so that you can see where my data, my insights come from. I'm an old television guy. I've spent most of my life in and around the world of television, the most powerful medium ever invented. And in the work I did in television, I was always taught that we blew it where television was concerned. We lost a great opportunity. And what I mean by that is television, if you think about it, is the only mass medium we knew ahead of time was going to be a mass medium. There was no question in the 1940s and 50s that radio listeners were going to embrace radio with pictures. So since we knew television was going to be a phenomenon before the first signal was ever broadcast, what I was taught that we should have done but didn't do is we should have tracked people before they had television and then gone back to them year after year as they acquired and used it to see how it changed their lives. And if we had done that, we could have learned some very powerful things. Starting with, where did the time for television come from? When viewers were watching 3 hours a day, and we were asked, where did those 3 hours come from? What were we doing less of? We didn't know. We just grabbed that time out of the air. We could have learned if the time for television came from talking as a family, reading books or newspapers, sleep, or from some other place. And I became convinced in the 1990s, working with the American broadcast networks, that the impact of digital technology, first the web and now mobile, was going to be far more powerful than television. So believing that we lost a great opportunity with television and that the impact of digital was going to be even more important than television, 11 years ago we launched this massive project. This tracking of digital that we thought should have been conducted of television in the 40s and 50s. And very briefly, we started in the United States with a representative sample of the American population. We've gone back to the same people 11 years in a row, and we've watched as non-users move to dial-up, as dial-up users migrate to broadband. We saw almost immediately broadband changes everything, not because of the speed, but it's the always-on, the direct connection that changes your whole relationship to the web, has led to it becoming our most important source of information, has led to us wanting the internet not just on our desks at home in the office, but in our cars, in our pockets, in our purses, and next to our beds when we go to sleep, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We watch as 2% drop off the web each year, and we want to know who are these people who leave and why, and more importantly, do they return, and if so, when, and what brings them back? And then 11 years in, we track the never users. Who are the people who have never gone online and why? How do they do the things offline the rest of us do online? And increasingly, a question we're starting to ask, should we care that they're non-users? Should we be trying to persuade them, cajole them to go online, or should we let them live their lives peaceably and happily off of the web? We started this work in the US. We're now doing it in 34 countries around the world. We do this throughout Europe and Asia and Latin America. We're in Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and Chile and Ecuador. And we've been here in Argentina for the last 7 years, which gives me an excuse to keep coming back to Buenos Aires, an excuse I hope I have for a very long time. So that's some of the work we do. Let me share with you, on the time I have, some of the key trends we've been seeing around the world where digital is concerned. And let me start with traditional media. I used to teach mass communication. For any of you who have been in Los Angeles, I used to teach at UCLA. And when I used to teach mass comm, I argued that no medium goes away or disappears. They adapt, they change. If ever a medium were going to go away, it would have been radio after the beginning of television, when television sucked all the content out of radio, took all the stars out of radio. Radio didn't roll over and die. It adapted. It changed. It formed relationships with the music industry. Today, radio is a vibrant and important medium, but a smaller medium and a smaller business than it used to be. As we look at all of our mass media, I believe all of it will survive, but most of it will survive as smaller players or smaller businesses, with one big exception. We'll get to the exception a little bit later. But this being smaller, that's been going on for generations. If you look at theatrical film, going to the movies, in North America, in 1946, we sold 4.3 billion movie tickets. Last year, population had more than doubled since 1946. To keep pace, we would have had to sell 9 billion movie tickets. Instead, we sold 1.3 billion. Put another way, 1946, 90 million people a week went to the movies. Last year, the population had more than doubled. Only 22 million people a week went to the movies. It's not a surprise that theatrical film reached its peak in 1946. That was on the eve of the introduction of television. But theatrical film remains a high-profile business, a highly profitable business, but it's learned how to survive as a smaller business. It also drives the home video business, which at the moment has problems, but has sustained the industry over the years. The music business. The music business has a business model that is nothing short of extortion. The business model of the music industry has said historically, you like 2 songs? You have to go out and spend 60 pesos or $15 on a CD. Today, interest in music has never been greater. People listen to more music in more places than they ever have before. Love of music is greater than it's ever been, but people aren't going to the music store and spending $15 for 2 songs. In most cities, you can't even find a music store. Our 2 flagship music stores in America, even if you haven't seen them, you probably know of them. Tower Records on Sunset Strip, been gone for over 3 years now. Virgin Megastore in Times Square, along with every other Virgin Megastore in America and almost every Virgin Megastore in the world. I say almost because I was in Paris in May, and there still is a Virgin Megastore on the Champs-Élysées, but they don't think it's going to last very long. But every other Virgin Megastore gone for over 2 years. Walking around Buenos Aires, I couldn't find a music store, one of those big music stores. Even if they are here, and I suspect they're not, I bet 10 years ago there were 10 or 15 of them. People aren't going to the music store, they're going online and either stealing the 2 songs they want, or they're going to legal downloading services and buying them for $2 or $2.58. The depressing future of the music business, not music, music has an amazing future. But the depressing future of the music business is, if they get it right, if they figure out how to get you, and more importantly your children, to go online and buy their music rather than steal it, and that's a big if they succeed, then what used to produce $15 in the past will produce $2 today. And that's if they get it right. I use this very bold statement, business model, nothing short of extortion. 2 examples to prove that. My friends at Sony Music say off the record, they won't say this on the record for reasons you'll understand in a moment, say that 8 years ago, in 2003, they produced an album by the artist Cher. And on that album was a global hit song called Do You Believe? Sony, her own record label, admits there's not another listenable song on the entire album. And they wouldn't sell it as a single. You had to spend $15 for one song. And second example, over the summer, I counted my CDs. Turns out I have 400 CDs. I'm the last generation that will ever own 400 CDs. Today's teenagers are the last generation that will ever own any CDs. But I went through my 400 CDs, and for each one I asked how many of them, if I could have bought them song by song, would I have bought more than 2 songs? There were about 18. Or 4%. There was Pink Floyd's The Wall. I would have bought every song on Pink Floyd's The Wall, but only 18. So as I look at my 400 CDs, I see all this music I treasure. I also see thousands of dollars I was compelled to spend that I wouldn't have spent if I had a choice. And now, the other thing about my 400 CDs, I spend thousands of dollars and I only own this much music. And all those CDs do me no good being here in Buenos Aires. I have to be where they are. And in the future, through things, not the future, today, through things like Spotify, Pandora, I can pay nothing or $5 a month with no advertising, and I don't own this much music. I have this much music, and I can listen to it in Buenos Aires or London or wherever I am. That's the future of the music business. Print, 30 years ago, teenagers didn't read newspapers, but started to when they got into their 20s and 30s. Today, teenagers don't read newspapers, and the evidence is clear they never will. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, well, teenagers just don't care about news. All they care about is Facebook and Twitter. Not true. Teenagers around the world more interested in news than any teenage generation in the last 70 years. They've figured out that what happens halfway around the world can change their lives. They're just not going to the paper. They're going online. And every country in the world we are in, when internet penetration gets to 30%, printed newspaper sales begin to decline. So India, where internet penetration's at 9%, printed newspaper sales soaring. But we think when it gets to 30, it will begin to decline. The sad truth for newspapers, and this is true in Argentina and all of Latin America and everywhere, the sad truth for newspapers is every time a newspaper reader dies, he or she is not being replaced by a new reader. We saw this 11 years ago. In the year 2000, I was invited by the American Society of Newspaper Editors, who incidentally changed their name 2 years ago to the American Society of News Editors. I was invited by the ASNE to speak in 2000 at their annual convention. I told them exactly what I just told you. I said, every time one of your readers dies, they're not being replaced by a new reader. And then I added, you have 25 to 30 years left to figure it out. They called me dangerous. They called me an alarmist. They used every name they could think of except the one that turned out to be accurate. I was an optimist.